My boyfriend claimed his ex was pregnant, then tried to make me buy them a house. He never expected me to uncover the truth. My name is Sophia Bennett. I'm 29 years old, and until last Tuesday night, I believe the biggest decision Ethan Carter and I had left to make was whether we were finally ready to buy a house together. I couldn't have been more wrong. Ethan and I had been together for 2 years. He was 27, funny, charming, and incredibly good at putting off difficult conversations. Whenever something serious came up, he'd promise we'd deal with it later, and somehow I'd always let it go. We rented a bright 2-bedroom apartment near downtown. The lease was in my name, and I'd recently been promoted at the financial consulting firm where I worked. For the first time in years, I felt financially secure. To me, the promotion meant financial independence. About 6 weeks earlier, we'd had our biggest argument. He spent the entire evening showing me listings, calculating mortgage payments, and explaining how much I could qualify for with my new salary. That was what stuck with me. Every calculation was based on my salary, not what we could realistically afford together. When I told him I wanted another year to save before taking on a 30-year mortgage, he looked frustrated. "You always need more time," he said. "More savings, more planning. At some point, you either build a future together or admit you're never going to." A few days later, we moved on, or at least I thought we had. The following Tuesday, just after 9, Ethan came home from meeting friends. I was on the couch answering a few work emails, while a basketball game played quietly in the background. He walked into the living room without taking off his jacket. One look at his face told me something was wrong. "We need to talk." I closed my laptop. "What happened?" He stayed standing for a moment before finally saying, "Olivia is pregnant." I blinked. What? Olivia's pregnant. Olivia was his ex-girlfriend. They dated in college and still crossed paths through mutual friends, but Ethan had always insisted she was completely in his past. I slowly stood up. "What do you mean Olivia is pregnant?" He swallowed. "She says the baby's mine." The room fell silent. I muted the television and looked at him. "You told me you hadn't been alone with her in years." "I hadn't." "Then explain how she could be pregnant with your child." He rubbed his face before answering. "Remember the night we fought about buying a house? I went out with Marcus and the others. Olivia was there. We'd both been drinking. And one thing led to another." I stared at him. One thing? It was one mistake. The confession hurt, but what hurt even more was hearing him reduce it to one mistake. "You slept with your ex?" He nodded. "When?" "About 3 weeks ago." The date hit me immediately. 3 weeks earlier, Ethan had come home after 2 in the morning and casually told me he'd fallen asleep on Marcus's couch after drinking too much. I'd believed him. "So Marcus covered for you?" "Sophia, did he even know you were using him as an excuse? Can we not focus on that right now?" I let out a bitter laugh. "You cheated on me, lied about where you were, and now you're telling me your ex is pregnant. What exactly do you expect me to focus on?" He didn't mention us or the affair. "The baby," he answered immediately. He pulled out a chair and sat across from me, as if we were discussing a budget instead of the end of our relationship. "This changes everything," he said. "We should start looking at houses this weekend." I stared at him. "We?" He nodded. "If we're staying together, this apartment won't be big enough." "You expect me to help raise a child you had with your ex?" "I expect us to deal with reality." "No, Ethan. You're asking me to pay for the consequences of your affair." "That's not fair." "Really? You cheated, lied about it, and now you want me to buy you a house?" "It wouldn't just be for me." "And Olivia? She'd have her own place. The baby would stay with us part of the time." He kept saying us as though nothing fundamental had changed. The pregnancy wasn't what unsettled me anymore. It was how desperately he wanted me to buy a house. "How far along is she?" I asked. 3 weeks. "And she's already taken 5 positive pregnancy tests." "Yeah." "Has she seen a doctor?" "Not yet." "So you're asking me to make a 6-figure financial decision based on home pregnancy tests?" "They're accurate." "They suggest someone may be pregnant," I replied. "They're not medical confirmation." He folded his arms. "Why does that matter so much?" "Because you're asking me to change my entire future. I'm asking you to stand by me." "No, you're asking me to buy a house because your ex says she's pregnant." I sat across from him and held his gaze. 3 weeks is very early. Are you sure that's what she told you?" "Yes." "And she's certain the baby's yours?" "Of course." "How?" He frowned. "What do you mean? 3 weeks ago you told me you were sleeping on Marcus's couch. Today you're telling me you were with Olivia. I don't think it's unreasonable to verify everything before we start shopping for houses." His expression hardened. "So now you think she's lying?" "I think everyone involved should confirm the facts." "She already did." "No, a home pregnancy test isn't the same as a doctor's diagnosis." He pushed back from the table. "I knew you'd react like this." "Like what?" "Cold." I shook my head. "You cheated on me. You lied to me. Then, before you even apologized, you started talking about mortgage payments." "I'm trying to deal with reality." "So am I." "You made it about money." I looked at him in disbelief. "You made it about money the moment you walked through the door." "I said I was sorry." "You called it one mistake." "It was." "No." I stood. Cheating was one choice. Lying about it was another. Trying to pressure me into buying a house before I've had time to process any of this was another. He opened his mouth but didn't say anything. I took a breath before asking the question that mattered most. Has Olivia agreed to a paternity test? His head snapped up. A what? A paternity test. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. After 2 years together, that's your first reaction? My first reaction was listening while you admitted you cheated on me. This is the next logical question. You think Olivia slept with someone else? I don't know. And I don't know what else you've lied about. I kept my voice calm. If this child is yours, you'll have responsibilities. But before I tie my finances to any of this, I need proof. She says it's mine. And you also said you were sleeping at Marcus's apartment. He looked away. You've already lied to me once. You can't expect me to accept everything else on faith. Instead of answering, he started pacing. I knew my parents were right. I frowned. What did they say? Forget it. No, tell me. He sighed. They said you'd never commit unless someone forced you to. A chill ran through me. They already know? They know everything. When did you tell them? I didn't. He hesitated. Olivia called them a few days ago. So you've known about this for days? I needed time to think. But there was plenty of time to discuss my salary and buying a house. That's not what happened. Then explain what happened. He couldn't. Instead, he grabbed his jacket. I'm staying at my mom's tonight. Fine. At the door, he turned back. Maybe tomorrow you'll stop treating this like a courtroom. I folded my arms. You admitted cheating, claimed your ex is pregnant, and immediately asked me to buy a house. Asking for evidence isn't putting you on trial. A child needs stability. And a child deserves honesty. I looked him straight in the eye. Schedule a doctor's appointment. Confirm the pregnancy. Arrange a paternity test when it's medically possible. Until then, we're not discussing houses. He didn't answer. For the first time that night, I saw genuine panic on his face. Not because I'd raised my voice, because I refused to be rushed. After he left, I locked the door and spent the next hour reading about early pregnancy. The more I read, the less convinced I became. 3 weeks was extremely early. While home tests could be positive by then, many women wouldn't even know they were pregnant yet. The timing wasn't what bothered me most. It was Ethan. Instead of worrying about becoming a father, he seemed obsessed with getting me to buy a house. That bothered me far more than anything else. At 10:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Congratulations would have been nice before you started accusing everyone. I stared at the message for a long moment before replying. Congratulations on the baby. Schedule a doctor's appointment. I'll be there. Once everything is confirmed, we'll arrange a paternity test before discussing any financial commitments. The typing bubble appeared almost immediately, then vanished. Then appeared again. My phone kept ringing. Ethan called twice, with his mother in between, until I finally turned it face down on the table. By midnight, I'd counted 12 missed calls and half a dozen messages calling me selfish, paranoid, cold, and emotionally abusive. None of them answered the one question I couldn't stop asking myself. Why did a simple request for medical confirmation scare them more than the pregnancy itself? I barely slept after Ethan left. It wasn't the affair that kept replaying in my head. As painful as that was, something else bothered me even more. Every serious point in our conversation had somehow led back to the same destination: a house. He never asked whether I'd forgive him. Instead, he skipped straight to talking about buying a bigger house. The more I thought about it, the stranger it felt. By 6 the next morning, I was already sitting at my kitchen table with a mug of coffee that had gone cold while I reread article after article about early pregnancy. I wasn't trying to prove Olivia was lying. I wanted to know whether Ethan's story actually made sense. Everything I read said the same thing. 3 weeks was extremely early. While a positive home test was possible, many women wouldn't even know they were pregnant yet, and doctors often didn't confirm pregnancies until later. The timing was possible, but nowhere near as certain as Ethan was making it sound. At 7:18 the next morning, my phone rang. Ethan's mom, I answered after a moment. Sophia, how could you say something like that to Olivia? I didn't say anything to Olivia. You asked Ethan for a paternity test. I said we should have one before anyone expects me to make a major financial decision. That's the same thing. No, it isn't. Her voice sharpened. She's carrying Ethan's baby. That's what we've been told. So now you think she's been with someone else? I think everyone would benefit from confirming the facts. She sighed. 5 positive pregnancy tests aren't enough? They suggest she may be pregnant. They don't answer every question that follows. What more do you need? A doctor's appointment would be a good start. After that, a paternity test when it's medically possible. She was quiet for a moment before saying, You've always made everything more difficult than it needs to be. I've always been careful. You've kept Ethan waiting for 2 years. Waiting for what? For commitment. He never proposed. You still refused to buy a house. I wanted more time. Exactly. My son wants a family, and you keep delaying it. I took a slow breath. Ethan is the one who cheated. She hung up without another word. As I looked at my phone, one thing became obvious. She never once criticized Ethan for cheating. The only thing she cared about was whether I'd agree to buy the house. About an hour later, Ethan called. I'm sorry Mom called you. Did you ask her to? No. But she knew everything. I needed someone to talk to. You needed your family to pressure me. They're not pressuring you. Before I could respond, a text from his father appeared. We need to discuss your responsibilities. Seconds later, he called. My son says you're refusing to help. I'm refusing to rush into buying a house. The baby changes everything. If the baby is Ethan's, then Ethan has responsibilities. So do you. I frowned. Why? Because you're his partner. I was his partner before he slept with Olivia. He ignored that completely. Ethan also mentioned your promotion. So he told you about my salary? He said you're in a strong financial position. That doesn't mean I'm buying a house. Houses appreciate. So do investments. Rent is wasted money. I disagree. He laughed lightly. You young people overthink everything. I smiled. We just don't sign 30-year mortgages overnight. His tone hardened. If you really love Ethan, stop treating him like the enemy. I'm not. Then prove it. I don't prove love by buying property. I prove it with honesty. He had no answer. Like his wife, he never mentioned the affair. By then, it was obvious his family had already moved past the affair. Their only concern was getting me to pay for the future they'd planned. For the first time, I wondered whether Ethan had come up with this plan on his own. His parents sounded less surprised than prepared. Around noon, I called my older sister Claire. She answered right away. You sound exhausted. I am. What happened? I told her everything, from Ethan's confession to the supposed pregnancy, the pressure to buy a house, and the non-stop calls from his family. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she let out a slow breath. Something about this doesn't feel right. You think so too? Absolutely. What bothers you most? The pressure, she said without hesitation. You found out less than a day ago, and somehow everyone is already pushing you to buy a house. That's what doesn't make sense. I thought the same thing. What exactly have they been saying? I thought for a moment. Almost the same phrases every time. Step up. Be responsible. Stop questioning Olivia. Buy a house before it's too late. Claire frowned. That sounds rehearsed. It does. For the first time since Ethan left, I felt like I wasn't imagining things. I was starting to think I was overreacting. You're not. So what do I do? Stop arguing with them. And keep records. She told me to save every text, voicemail, missed call, and write down every conversation while it was still fresh. If things got worse, I'd want a complete timeline. As soon as we hung up, I created a folder on my laptop and saved everything. Screenshots, call logs, voicemails, and notes. Whether I'd ever need them or not, documenting facts felt far more useful than replaying the arguments in my head. Later that afternoon, Ethan finally texted, "Can we please move past this?" I replied immediately, "Yes. Schedule a doctor's appointment. I'll go with you." Several minutes later, he answered, "Olivia isn't ready yet." "Why not?" "She's overwhelmed." "Okay, let me know when she is." He never replied. About an hour later, his best friend Daniel texted me instead. "You really hurt Ethan?" I answered with one question. "Did he tell you he cheated on me?" After a long pause, Daniel replied, "He made a mistake. Don't make another one." I couldn't help noticing how quickly everyone had reduced Ethan's affair to a mistake, while my refusal to buy a house had somehow become the real problem. That evening, Ethan sent me 3 more house listings, complete with mortgage estimates and school ratings. He'd stopped trying to prove the pregnancy. Now he was acting as though we'd already agreed to buy the house. I ignored every link and replied with one sentence. "I'm not discussing houses until there's medical confirmation and, when appropriate, a paternity test." His response came almost instantly. "You're destroying our chance to be a family." I set my phone down and stared at the message. Until then, I'd been asking myself whether Ethan was telling the truth. Now I was asking something else. Why was everyone so desperate to stop me from waiting? If Olivia was really pregnant, a doctor's appointment and a paternity test would only confirm it. Waiting shouldn't have been a problem unless time itself threatened their story. By Friday morning, that question was the only thing I could think about. By Friday morning, the apartment felt different. Ethan was gone, but little reminders of him were still everywhere. His shoes had disappeared from the hallway, while his favorite coffee mug still sat beside the sink. I almost picked it up out of habit before remembering he wasn't coming back. Over the previous 2 days, I'd documented every text, call, voicemail, and conversation I could remember. Once I put everything into a timeline, one pattern became impossible to ignore. No matter who contacted me, the affair was barely mentioned. Somehow every conversation drifted back to the same subject, the house. Late Friday afternoon, Ethan texted, "Can we talk tonight?" I replied, "Come over at 7. He arrived exactly on time, carrying a thick folder instead of an apology. "I found some better options," he said as he spread printed house listings across my dining table. He pointed to them one by one, talking about school districts, finished nurseries, lower prices, and mortgage estimates, as if he were giving a sales presentation. "I really think this could work." I folded my arms. "Ethan, you've been here 15 minutes. So? You still haven't apologized." His smile disappeared. "I already told you I was sorry. You called it a mistake." "It was. You cheated on me. You lied about where you were. Now you're asking me to look at mortgage payments before we've even decided whether this relationship still exists." He sighed. "Life doesn't stop because we're upset." "No, but pretending nothing happened won't fix it either." He gestured toward the stack of listings. "This is reality." "No," I said. "This is avoidance. I'm trying to solve the problem. You're trying to skip over it. The baby doesn't care about our relationship. The baby hasn't even been confirmed by a doctor." "There you go again." "I haven't changed my position." Neither have I. He leaned forward. We need stability. I agree. Then let's start looking. No, let's start with a doctor's appointment. I already told you Olivia's overwhelmed. Then we'll wait. His expression tightened. We don't have time. That phrase immediately caught my attention. You've said that several times. Because it's true. Houses sell. They do, I replied. But a pregnancy doesn't become less real because you waited 2 weeks to see a doctor. His eyes shifted away for a split second. It was subtle, but it told me I'd touched the one subject he didn't want to discuss. When exactly did Olivia tell you she was pregnant? Tuesday. I frowned. I thought you said she'd known for several days. I did. So which is it? I got mixed up. No. I kept my voice calm. You changed your story. I didn't. You just did. He rubbed the back of his neck. It's been a crazy week. Maybe. Still, people telling the truth rarely struggled with simple timelines. People protecting a lie often did. After a long pause, he looked back at me. Can we stop treating this like an interrogation? I'm asking reasonable questions. Because you don't trust me. I trusted you 3 weeks ago. His shoulders dropped. I know. I trusted you when you said you were sleeping at Marcus's apartment. I'm sorry. I trusted you when you told me Olivia was part of your past. I'm sorry. I trusted you when I thought we were building a future together. I'm sorry. Every apology sounded exactly the same, as though he'd rehearsed them long before he walked through my door. Then he reached into the folder. I almost forgot. He slid one last document across the table. Our estimated monthly payment. I glanced at it, then looked again. The mortgage application listed only one income. Mine. I looked up. Where's your salary? You make more than I do. So your plan is for me to qualify for the mortgage? It'll still be our house. Our house, I said, pushing the paperwork back toward him, paid for with my income. It benefits both of us. It benefits you. He shook his head. Once again, he hid behind the same answer. The baby. You keep hiding behind that whenever something doesn't add up. His patience finally broke. Because there is a baby, Sophia. If there is, a doctor will confirm it. He threw up his hands. I can't keep doing this. Doing what? Feeling like I'm on trial? I'm pointing out that your story keeps changing. It doesn't have to make sense to you. It has to be true. Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, slipped it into his pocket, and stood. I need to take this. Go ahead. It's private. He stepped onto the balcony and closed the glass door behind him. I stayed where I was. His folder was still open on the table. Every document inside focused on one thing. Mortgage estimates, neighborhood maps, school ratings, and property taxes. There wasn't a single page about hospitals, prenatal care, custody, or child support. For someone who claimed he was about to become a father, he'd spent far more time planning a mortgage than preparing for a baby. A few minutes later, his voice rose just enough for me to hear through the glass. And she's still asking questions. A pause. No, she won't agree without proof. Then another sentence stopped me cold. The timing got messed up. I froze. A few seconds later, I heard him say quietly, I know. I'll figure something out. Another pause. No, don't call her yet. The call ended. I stepped away from the balcony before he came back inside. He forced a smile. Sorry about that. Everything okay? Yeah. Who was it? My dad. The answer came too quickly. What did he want? Just checking in. I studied him for a moment. You sounded stressed. He worries. Maybe. But the conversation I'd overheard didn't sound like a worried father checking on his son. It sounded like two people trying to manage a problem together. He slid the papers back into the folder and stood. So, the smile looked forced this time. Will you think about the houses? I'll think about everything. That answer seemed to satisfy him. For the first time that evening, Ethan looked relieved, convinced I'd finally stopped resisting. Before he left, he gave me an awkward hug. I'm glad we're making progress. So am I replied. The moment I heard the elevator doors close, I locked the apartment and sat down on the couch. One sentence kept replaying in my head. The timing got messed up. The more I replayed the conversation, the stranger it sounded. He'd never talked about becoming a father or seeing a doctor. The only thing he seemed worried about was the timing. I opened my notebook and wrote those 5 words across the top of the page. Underneath, I listed everything that hadn't made sense since Tuesday. The affair, the impossible pregnancy timeline, the constant pressure to buy a house, his parents getting involved almost immediately, the changing story, the doctor's appointment that never happened, and the mortgage plan built almost entirely around my income. Any one of those details might have been explainable on its own. Together, they pointed to something much bigger. For the first time, I stopped wondering whether Ethan had simply made a terrible mistake. I started wondering whether the pregnancy itself was part of the lie. Instead of confronting Ethan, I changed my strategy. I'd realized that people hiding the truth often became less careful once they believed you had stopped questioning them. The next morning, I texted him first. I've been thinking. Maybe we've both let our emotions get in the way. Let's slow down and work through this together. He replied almost immediately. Really? Yes. A few seconds later, another message appeared. Thank you. I knew you'd come around. I smiled because he believed I'd finally stopped digging. That afternoon, I called him. If this baby is going to affect both our lives, I'd like to come to the doctor's appointments. He hesitated. I don't think that's a good idea. Why? It would make Olivia uncomfortable. I don't need to go into the exam room. I can wait outside. I still don't think she'd like it. I'll even drive. After a long pause, he finally said, I'll ask her. Okay, when's the appointment? I don't know yet. You don't know? She hasn't scheduled one. She found out several days ago. I know. So why hasn't she called an obstetrician? She's overwhelmed. I understand. Just let me know when she schedules it. Sure. We ended the call, but I already knew how it would end. He'd promised to ask her and let me know before. He never had. 3 more days passed, and nothing happened. There was still no doctor's appointment, no ultrasound, and no paperwork. The only thing that kept arriving was more pressure to buy a house. On Monday morning, Ethan's mother texted me another property listing. Found a beautiful 4-bedroom in Maple Ridge. It already has a nursery. An hour later, his father sent me the number of a mortgage broker. He can get you pre-approved this week. That afternoon, Ethan sent another listing. Huge backyard. Perfect for kids. He even wrote kids, as though we'd already agreed there would be more than one. We still hadn't confirmed there was even one child, yet everyone was already planning our future. I stopped replying and created a folder on my laptop called Mortgage Pressure, where I saved every property listing, every message from his parents, and every attempt to rush me into making a decision. By Tuesday evening, the folder was already full. Claire stopped by with takeout and immediately noticed the stacks of text messages, legal notes, medical articles, and mortgage estimates covering my dining table. You've turned this into an investigation. I don't think I have a choice. She picked up one of Ethan's mortgage estimates and studied it. Have you noticed something? What? Every payment is right at the limit of your budget. She was right. The calculations were based almost entirely on my salary. Every number on the page depended on my income, not ours. Did he ever show you numbers using both incomes? She asked. No. Did he say how much he'd contribute to the down payment? No. She put the papers down and looked at me. So the plan was always for you to qualify. That's exactly how it looks. After a moment, she said quietly, Sophia, I don't think this is about the baby anymore. I nodded. I've been thinking the same thing. I think it's about your promotion. The words didn't surprise me. By then, I'd already reached the same conclusion. Every conversation eventually circled back to the same 3 things: my promotion, my salary, and buying a house. The next morning, I scheduled a consultation with a family attorney. I didn't tell Ethan. At that point, I wasn't planning to leave Ethan or take legal action. I just wanted to understand my position before signing anything that could affect the rest of my life. The attorney listened as I explained the affair, the supposed pregnancy, the pressure to buy a house, and the changing timeline. When I finished, she said, The smartest thing you've done is refuse to sign anything. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. So I'm not overreacting? Not at all. What if the pregnancy is real? Then Ethan has legal responsibilities. And me? None. She explained that I wasn't financially responsible for a child conceived outside our relationship. What if I bought a house with him first? Then everything becomes much more complicated, she said. Don't sign a mortgage or combine major assets until every important question has been answered. It wasn't dramatic advice. It was common sense. When I left her office, one thing became clear. I hadn't been asking for too much. I'd only been asking for facts. That evening, I tried one more approach. Instead of arguing, I called Ethan. I've been thinking about Olivia. What about her? If she's really going through all this, I'd like to apologize. I'd rather do it in person. He hesitated. I don't think that's a good idea. Why? She's having a hard time. I won't stay long. I'll ask her. There it was again. Another promise with no date, no plan, and no follow-up. Anything that could prove his story somehow became something we'd deal with later. 2 more days passed. Nothing happened. Then, by pure coincidence, I learned something Ethan hadn't expected. After work, I met our mutual friend Jessica for coffee. Halfway through the conversation, she mentioned Olivia. I heard she's pregnant. So did I. Poor thing. Did Ethan tell you? No, Olivia did. When? Jessica thought for a moment. About a week before Ethan started telling everyone. I drove home replaying Jessica's words. If she was right, Ethan had known about the fake pregnancy for nearly a week before he confessed anything to me. That meant he'd had plenty of time to build the story before I ever heard it. Instead of confronting him, I decided to wait. If he believed I trusted him again, he'd eventually make a mistake. Within a day, Ethan was texting me good morning again, sending memes, dog videos, and sooner or later, another house listing. I found another neighborhood you'd love. Prices are going up. We should make an offer before the end of the month. I never argued. I always gave him the same answer. We'll figure it out. Those 4 words relaxed him every time. He thought I'd finally accepted his story. He had no idea I was waiting for him to stop being so careful. That Friday afternoon, I called him. Are you free tonight? Yeah, why? I thought I'd cook dinner. I'd like that. After a brief pause, I added, I've been thinking about what you've been saying. About the house? Maybe. He couldn't hide his excitement. I knew you'd come around. I'm not making promises, I said, but maybe it's time we talked about the future instead of arguing. I'll bring something to celebrate. He arrived just after 7, carrying a bottle of sparkling cider. I figured we'd save the champagne until everything settles down. There was that phrase again. Everything settles down, as though our future was already decided. Dinner felt surprisingly normal. We talked about work, movies, Claire's latest hiking trip, and even his parents. For almost an hour, neither of us mentioned Olivia. When dessert arrived, I finally steered the conversation where I wanted it to go. I've been thinking about the baby. His shoulders relaxed. So have I. I don't want us fighting for months. Neither do I. I'd rather move forward. I've already spoken to a mortgage broker again, he said. If we're serious, we could start looking next week. I'm not surprised. He searched my face. So, are we? I think it's worth talking about. His eyes lit up. You mean that? I do. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I knew we'd get through this. I smiled, then gently pulled my hand away. Before we look at houses, there's one thing I still need. His smile faded. What? Something official that confirms the pregnancy. I already told you Olivia's pregnant. I know what you told me. I'm asking for a doctor's report, an ultrasound, anything official. He leaned back. She's not comfortable sharing her medical information. I understand. I kept my voice calm. Then let me come to the next appointment. I already told you that's difficult. I don't need to go inside. She still wouldn't like it. I'll wait outside. He shook his head. I don't think that's a good idea. I looked at him quietly. Every time I ask for proof, there's another reason to postpone it. You still don't trust me. I trusted you until you admitted you lied. I said I was sorry. I know, but apologies don't answer questions. He stood and began pacing. You'll never let this go. I will. I held his gaze. The moment facts replace assumptions. He stopped. What if Olivia refuses? Then we wait. We don't have time. I nodded. You say that every time I ask for proof. I'm talking about the housing market. And I'm talking about a decision that could affect the rest of my life. He ran a hand through his hair. You always twist what I say. No, I just remember what you say. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, he looked at me. What would convince you? I want to hear everything directly from Olivia. His expression changed immediately. What? I've only heard the story from you. Before I build my future around it, I want to hear her side. He slowly shook his head. I don't think that's possible. Why not? She's under a lot of stress. I won't make it harder for her. I still don't think it's a good idea. It was the same pattern every time. Different excuse, same result. Every path that could verify his story somehow led nowhere. I stood up, walked into the kitchen, and returned with a small white box from the pharmacy. He frowned. What's that? I set it on the table. A sealed box of pregnancy tests. He looked confused. Sophia? I'm not asking Olivia to come here. Then why buy those? I want to make this simple. He waited. Call Olivia. His face froze. Right now? Yes. Put her on speaker. If she's pregnant, she can take one tonight. If she's already seen a doctor, she can tell me that instead. Either way, we'll finally have an answer. The color drained from his face. That's ridiculous. No, what's unreasonable is asking me to sign a mortgage without giving me a reason to trust the story. He stared at the unopened box, but never reached for it. You've already decided she's lying. I haven't decided anything. Then why are we doing this? Because every time I ask for proof, it suddenly becomes impossible. He rubbed his face. This is unbelievable. I agree. The room fell silent. He just stood there, staring at the box without touching it or reaching for his phone. Finally, I asked quietly, why won't you call her? He swallowed. Because. The words never came. I waited. Nothing. Ethan. He slowly looked up. I know something about this story isn't true. His eyes flickered. I don't know every detail yet, but I know you've been lying. He shook his head automatically. No. I heard your phone call. Every trace of color disappeared from his face. What phone call? The one on my balcony. I held his eyes. You said the timing got messed up. His mouth opened, then closed again. You were listening? I wasn't trying to. But I heard enough. This time he couldn't even look at me. I also know you found out about Olivia days before you told me. He said nothing. I know every doctor's appointment somehow got postponed. Still nothing. And every mortgage plan you've shown me depends almost entirely on my income. His shoulders finally slumped. For the first time since this started, he looked less defensive than defeated. I pulled out the chair across from me. Sit down. After a moment, he did. I sat across from him and took a slow breath. I'm only going to ask you one more question. He gave a faint nod. Ethan, is Olivia actually pregnant? He closed his eyes. For several long seconds, the only sound in the apartment was his breathing. Finally, he whispered, no, even though I'd been expecting it. Hearing him admit it still hurt. So she isn't pregnant. He slowly shook his head. No. Then why? He buried his face in his hands. Because I thought I was losing you. You lost me when you cheated. I know. Then why keep lying? He looked up, his eyes full of regret. My parents kept saying you'd never commit. They thought you'd keep putting off the house forever. And Olivia? She agreed to help. My stomach tightened. Help? We thought... He stopped to swallow. We thought if you believed there was a baby, you'd finally agree to buy a house. I stared at him. So all of this was planned? He nodded. My parents knew? They knew what I told them. And Olivia? It was her idea to fake the pregnancy. Everything finally fit together. Ethan hadn't simply cheated on me, he'd lied, invented a pregnancy, and spent days trying to pressure me into buying a house before I could verify a single thing. This hadn't happened on impulse. They'd built the lie piece by piece, hoping I'd panic before I started asking questions. I walked to the front door and opened it. "We're done." "Sophia." "No. I love you." I looked him straight in the eye. "If you loved me, you wouldn't have manipulated me." I panicked. "No." I shook my head. Panic lasts a moment. This took planning. "We can fix this." "No, Ethan." I held the door open. Trust isn't destroyed by one bad choice. It's destroyed by a long series of deliberate ones. He stood there for a few seconds before quietly picking up his jacket and walking out. As the elevator doors closed, I realized something. For 2 years, I'd believed we were building a future together. The truth was that I'd been building it alone. He'd only been trying to make me pay for his. After he left, the apartment finally felt quiet again, and this time, the silence was a relief. I gathered every mortgage brochure, payment estimate, and floor plan he'd left behind and dropped them into the recycling bin. I wasn't throwing away my future. I was throwing away the future someone else had tried to force on me. The peace lasted until the next morning. Just after 8, Ethan's mother called. I declined. She called again, then again. When I still didn't answer, she left a voicemail accusing me of throwing Ethan out instead of listening to him. I deleted it without replying. An hour later, Ethan's father texted, "You owe Ethan one more chance to explain himself." I read the message once, blocked both of their numbers, and went back to work. Around lunchtime, Ethan's best friend Daniel texted me. "Can we talk?" I replied with a single question. "Did Ethan tell you the pregnancy was fake?" A few minutes later, he answered, "What?" I sent him a screenshot of Ethan admitting the pregnancy had been invented to pressure me into buying a house. Daniel read the screenshot and never replied. That silence told me everything. That evening, Olivia called. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. "Sophia, I owe you an apology." "Ethan told you everything?" "Yes." "I never thought it would go this far." "You still went along with it." "I know." "You lied to me." "I know." "You let his parents pressure me." "I know." She didn't make excuses. "I made a terrible decision," she said quietly. "I let Ethan convince me this would save your relationship. I was wrong." For the first time, someone involved accepted responsibility without trying to blame someone else. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," she said. "I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry." "I appreciate that," I replied, "but it doesn't change what happened." "I understand." When the call ended, I knew the lie was finally over. Over the following week, the messages slowly stopped. Ethan's parents never contacted me again after I blocked them. His friends stopped reaching out, and Ethan respected the boundary I'd set. The silence was exactly what I needed. The next Saturday, Claire came over for lunch. She looked around my apartment and smiled. "You seem different." "In a good way?" "In a peaceful way." "I'll take that." As we ate, she asked, "So what's next?" I didn't have to think about it. "I'm keeping my apartment." "Good." "I'm keeping my promotion." "Even better." "And I'm finally taking the vacation I postponed because Ethan wanted every spare dollar saved for a down payment." Claire laughed. "So you're buying something after all?" "A plane ticket." "That's a much better investment than the house he wanted." "I think so too." A couple of weeks later, I ran into a mutual friend at the grocery store. She told me Ethan had moved back in with his parents. I also heard he's telling people he made one stupid mistake. I smiled. It was a long series of choices. She nodded slowly, as if she'd finally understood the difference. Life slowly returned to normal after that. Work became exciting again. I accepted projects I'd been putting off, spent weekends hiking with Claire, and reconnected with friends I'd neglected while trying to hold my relationship together. Sometimes I still thought about Ethan, not because I missed him, but because I kept replaying all the warning signs I'd ignored. Looking back, the warning signs had always been there. The constant pressure to buy a house, the way every disagreement became a test of my commitment, and how quickly my promotion turned into our money. Each moment seemed small at the time. Together, they revealed exactly who Ethan had been all along. The fake pregnancy wasn't where the manipulation started. It was simply the moment I finally saw it. About a month later, I received a text from an unknown number. "I still love you. I hope someday you'll forgive me." I read it once and deleted it. Some stories don't need another conversation. They already have an ending. Looking back, the most valuable thing I kept wasn't my apartment, my savings, or my promotion. It was learning to trust my own judgment. Looking back, I realized something simple. Anyone who truly has nothing to hide won't be afraid of a little time, a few questions, or proof. The people who fight hardest against verification are often protecting something they hope you'll never discover. Ethan's fake pregnancy didn't destroy my future. It saved me from building one with the wrong man.